I had already signed the retainer. I had already made the copies. The folder was sitting in the trunk of my car the night Marcus walked into that restaurant, like he owned the air inside it. Which, knowing Marcus, he probably thought he did. We had been married for 11 years. 11 years of his dry cleaning bills, and his mother's birthday dinners, and his way of laughing just a little too loud whenever someone complimented me, so that the attention would drift back to him like water finding its level. 11 years, and I still caught myself apologizing for things I hadn't done. That's not a habit you develop overnight. That's something that gets built into you, one comment at a time, until you can't find the seam where you end and the apology begins. My name is Diana. I was 41 years old that night, which felt significant to me, though I couldn't have told you why. Maybe because 41 is the kind of age where you stop waiting to become someone and start looking at who you already are. I'm a CPA, have been for 16 years. I work with small businesses mostly, restaurants, family-owned retail, a few medical practices. I know how to read a balance sheet the way other people read body language. Numbers don't lie to you, not really. They conceal things, yes. They get buried and rerouted and shuffled around. But if you know where to look, they always tell you the truth eventually. Marcus was in commercial real estate. He was good at it, or at least good at performing success, which in real estate is often the same thing. He wore it well. The suits, the watch, the way he ordered wine at dinner like he'd been doing it his whole life, which he hadn't. I'd known him when he was wearing canvas sneakers and splitting a check 3 ways. I remembered that Marcus. I don't think he did anymore. The trouble started the way trouble usually starts in a marriage. Not with something big, but with something small that you explain away and then can't stop seeing. 14 months before that restaurant dinner, I found a receipt in his coat pocket. I wasn't looking for anything. I was checking pockets before dropping the coat at the cleaners, same as I'd done 100 times. The receipt was from a florist on Clement Street. $37. 2 dozen tulips. I am allergic to tulips. I set the receipt on the kitchen counter and looked at it for a long time. Then I put it in the pocket of my own cardigan and went about my morning. I didn't say anything. I know how that sounds, like I was being passive or in denial. But I've worked with enough clients to know that you don't make your first move before you understand the full picture. You gather. You document. You wait for the numbers to tell you the whole story before you decide what to do with it. So I started paying attention in the way I knew how. His phone wasn't something I went through. I didn't need to. What I paid attention to was money. Because money is the one thing people can't fake. You can fake a smile, fake an excuse, fake a late night at the office. You cannot fake a bank statement. We had a joint account for household expenses, and we had our individual accounts, and we had a shared investment portfolio that my uncle Roland, a financial advisor for 30 years, had helped us build after Marcus's first good commission year. I had access to the joint account statements automatically. The others I had to be more careful about. What I found over the next 3 months was a pattern. Small withdrawals from his personal account, regular enough to be intentional, irregular enough to avoid looking like a fixed payment. Cash, mostly. But also charges at a hotel in the Embarcadero that we had never stayed at together. A dinner for 2 in Hayes Valley. On a Tuesday, I had thought he was in Sacramento for a site visit. I called his colleague Jerome once, just casually, to ask if the Sacramento meeting had run long. Jerome said he hadn't been to Sacramento with Marcus, didn't even know there was a site visit. I thanked him and hung up and sat in my car in the parking garage under my office building for 22 minutes. Then I called an attorney. Her name was Patricia Holt. She'd been recommended to me by a client who had been through something similar, the kind of recommendation that gets passed quietly between women, in low voices, like a phone number you only give to people you trust. Patricia was compact, efficient. With reading glasses, she kept on a beaded chain and a habit of writing things down by hand, even when her laptop was open in front of her. I liked her immediately. She told me what I already knew and what I didn't. She explained the process clearly. California is a community property state, which meant that anything we'd acquired during the marriage would be divided. But she also told me that in cases where one spouse had been dissipating marital assets, spending community money on an affair, the court could consider that when determining the final division. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I'm working on it," I said. She looked at me over her glasses. "Work faster." I did. What I found next was something Patricia hadn't anticipated, and I hadn't either, not exactly. Though looking back, there were signs I had walked past without recognizing. 6 months before the tulip receipt, Marcus had formed an LLC, Halcyon Property Group, LLC. I found it on the California Secretary of State's business search portal, which is public record, which anybody can access, which Marcus had apparently assumed I would never think to check. Halcyon had a registered agent I didn't recognize. It had a business address in Walnut Creek. It had, according to the documents I eventually pulled together with Patricia's help, been the recipient of a series of consulting fees paid by 2 of the commercial properties Marcus managed, fees that should have flowed through his employer's commission structure, but didn't. He had been siphoning, not a lot, not at first, but steadily, the way you bleed a thing slowly so it doesn't notice it's losing blood. I spent 4 nights at the kitchen table after he went to bed, working through what I could access and making notes as about what I needed Patricia to subpoena. I kept a legal pad and a cup of chamomile tea, and I wrote down everything in the handwriting I used for client audit prep. Small, neat, even, because handwriting like that keeps you calm. It keeps you in your accountant's brain and out of your wife's brain, and I needed my accountant's brain. I did cry once, a Thursday night around 2 in the morning. Not about Marcus specifically. Or maybe about Marcus, but also about the version of my life I had been living in. The one where I thought we were building something together, even when things were hard. I cried about that woman, the one who packed his bags for work trips, and remembered his mother's dietary restrictions and still reached for his hand sometimes in movie theaters out of pure muscle memory. I cried for about 10 minutes. Then I washed my face and went back to the legal pad. You don't have to stop grieving to keep moving. I've learned that. The 2 things can happen at the same time. Marcus told me about the dinner 3 weeks before it happened. He said he'd been thinking, and he thought we should formalize things, and he wanted to do it in a setting where everyone who mattered to both of us would be present, because he felt that keeping things civil was important. He said this in the kitchen, while pouring his morning coffee, not quite meeting my eyes. I asked him what kind of dinner. He said just family and close friends. He'd already made the reservation, a private dining room at Aldridge House, which is the kind of restaurant in San Francisco where the prix starts at $200 a person, and you have to know someone to get a reservation on short notice. I had always wanted to go to Aldridge House. Marcus had always said it was overpriced. He was paying, he said. He wanted to handle everything. I said that sounded fine. I said it in the voice I had been practicing for 11 years without realizing it. The voice that didn't push back, didn't ask too many questions, didn't make things harder than they needed to be. He heard that voice and he relaxed. He always relaxed when he heard that voice. After he left for work, I called Patricia. "He wants to have a family dinner to announce the divorce," I said. There was a pause. "Where?" I told her. "That's a statement dinner," she said. "I know. He's controlling the narrative. I know that, too. Are you going?" I looked out the kitchen window at the lemon tree in the backyard that I had planted 4 years ago that had finally started producing fruit last spring. "Yes," I said. "I'm going." She told me what she needed me to have in place before then. We had 3 weeks. I told her I would handle it. The guest list Marcus sent around was 22 people. His parents, his brother Kevin and Kevin's wife, my mother, my Aunt Phyllis, our mutual friends Brent and Kayla, colleagues from his office, a few people from the neighborhood we'd been friendly with over the years. He sent it by group text, casual and organized at the same time, which was very Marcus. The message said, "Gathering for a special announcement, details to follow. Dress, smart casual." My mother called me within 4 minutes of receiving it. "Diana." That was all she said. She said it the way mothers say your name when they're asking you 10 questions with 1 word. "I know, Mom. What is he announcing? I think you know." A pause. "Are you okay?" I thought about the legal pad on the kitchen table. I thought about Halcyon Property Group, LLC. I thought about Patricia's reading glasses and her beaded chain and the way she had said "work faster" without raising her voice. "I will be," I said. My mother is the kind of woman who raised me on 2 phrases: handle your business and don't let them see you sweat. She didn't say either one this time. She just said, "All right, I'll be there." That meant more to me than almost anything. My Aunt Phyllis, who is my mother's older sister and the person I have called for tactical advice since I was 19 years old, called me 20 minutes later. "I looked at the invitation," she said. "That man rented out the back room of a $200 restaurant to announce that he's leaving you. You know what that is?" "What is it, Aunt Phyllis?" "That's a man who needs an audience. Anytime someone needs an audience for something they're doing to you, they already know it's wrong." She paused. "You have your paperwork in order?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good girl. Wear something that makes you feel like yourself." I wore the midnight blue dress I'd bought for a client's award dinner 2 years ago and never found another occasion for. Square neck, fitted through the waist, falls just below the knee. My Aunt Phyllis, when she saw me walk in, touched my arm and nodded once. That was enough. Aldridge House's back dining room had low lighting and dark wood paneling, and a long table set with cream linens and fresh flowers. White ranunculus, I noticed, because I always notice flowers now. Marcus was already there when I arrived, standing near the head of the table, talking to his brother, Kevin, with the particular posture he used when he wanted to appear at ease but wasn't. He was wearing a gray suit I hadn't seen before. He'd bought it for this. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, the kind that lands about an inch from your face, and said I looked nice. The room filled up over the next 20 minutes. I found my seat, which was midway down the table, not at the end. He was at the head. I noted that. Dinner was ordered. Wine was poured. Marcus had arranged for a set menu. 4 courses. Everyone's choices made in advance, which meant that he had been planning this long enough to coordinate a restaurant and a guest list and a prix-fixe menu without once asking me what I wanted to eat. The conversation was the performative kind. The kind where everyone in the room understands that there is a thing happening, and no one quite knows what it is yet, so they talk loudly about ordinary things. Travel, work, the new construction on Market Street. Marcus laughed often and generously, the way he did when he was the most comfortable person in the room. And he was comfortable. That was the thing I kept coming back to. He was genuinely comfortable. He waited until the dessert course. He stood, and he lifted his glass. A very particular gesture. Unhurried, like he had practiced it, and he said he was grateful everyone had come. That they were the people who mattered most to him, that he wanted to share something with them in person, because that was the kind of respect they deserved. He said that he and I had grown apart, that he and I both knew it, that he had made the difficult decision to end our marriage, and that he hoped for a future where we could both be our best selves. He used the phrase best selves. He used the phrase new chapter. He used the phrase mutual respect and dignity, and he said it while looking at me, which was the part I had braced for. The room was very quiet. I looked back at him. I didn't say anything. I took a sip of my water. I set the glass down carefully. I looked at my mother, who was looking at me, and her face was composed and still, and I knew where I got it from. Marcus seemed to be waiting for something. A reaction, I think. A crack in something. Kevin's wife, whose name is Amber, made a small sound of surprise. Brent, our mutual friend, looked between Marcus and me like he was watching a serve he wasn't sure had landed in bounds. Marcus began to sit down. He had a small smile on his face. That was when my phone vibrated on the table, and I glanced at it and I said, "I'm sorry, I need to take this," and I excused myself. I had staged it that way. The call was from Patricia's paralegal, and it lasted 90 seconds, and it confirmed what I needed to confirm. I already knew the answer, but I needed the 90 seconds out of the room, and I needed Marcus to watch me leave. I came back in. I sat down. I smoothed my napkin onto my lap. Marcus looked at me with an expression I recognized. A waiting expression, tinged with something I can only describe as satisfaction. He thought the call had rattled me. He thought I had gone to the hallway to collect myself. He said, to the table, "I know this is a lot to process, but I want all of you to know that I intend to make this as smooth as possible. Diana will be taken care of. I've made sure of that." Taken care of. My Aunt Phyllis, to her eternal credit, made absolutely no expression whatsoever. My mother picked up her dessert spoon. I said, "I appreciate that, Marcus." And then I said, "I did want to mention, since everyone is here, that I've been working with an attorney for the past several months. Patricia Holt, if anyone wants to write that down." I looked at Kevin when I said that, because Kevin was also an attorney, and I wanted him to recognize the name. He did. I could see it on his face. "We've filed the petition," I said, "and I want to be transparent, since transparency is something I know matters to everyone here. The discovery process has turned up some things that we'll be addressing in court, including the formation of Halcyon Property Group, LLC, in Walnut Creek, and the consulting fee arrangements with Meridian Pacific Properties and the Stockton Street portfolio." The table was quiet in a different way now. Marcus's face did something I had never seen it do. It went through several expressions in the span of about 2 seconds, the way a screen goes through loading states. Processing, processing, processing. He started. "This isn't the place." "You chose the place," I said. "I'm just here." Kevin set down his fork. Marcus's father, a man named Gerald, who had never fully warmed to me, and who I had spent a decade trying to win over, looked at his son with an expression that was new to his face as well. Something that looked a great deal like the beginning of doubt. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Patricia had told me early on, "Name the thing. Then let the room do the work." People who have just been told that something exists will do their own filling in. You don't have to explain it. You just have to name it. I picked up my dessert spoon and tasted the panna cotta, which was excellent. Marcus asked to speak to me privately after the dinner. We stood in the small corridor between the back room and the main restaurant, him and me, with the muffled sound of other people's evenings on the other side of the wall. He looked different up close than he had at the head of the table. Smaller somehow. Not physically. Marcus is 6 feet tall and will be until he isn't, but something structural in his face had shifted. "Where did you get that?" he said. "The LLC is public record. Marcus, the consulting fees were documented in the property's own accounting records, which I know how to read." He looked at me for a long moment. "I didn't think you'd—" "I know," I said. "That was your mistake." He started to say something about working something out. about not needing to make this ugly, about thinking about what was best for both of us. He used the word reasonable. He used the word fair. I listened to all of it. Then I said, "Patricia will be in touch with your attorney Monday morning. Have a good night, Marcus." I went back inside to collect my bag and say goodbye to my mother and Aunt Phyllis. My mother hugged me for a long time without saying anything. Aunt Phyllis held my face in her hands for a moment, just a moment, and said, "There she is. There she is." The months after that were not simple. I want to be honest about that. Legal proceedings are grinding and expensive, and there are weeks where you get home from work and sit on your couch, still in your coat because you don't have the energy to take it off. There are friends who go quiet because they don't know which side to stand on, and they decide that disappearing is easier. There are mornings when you wake up, and the grief is right there waiting for you, not about the marriage anymore exactly, but about some earlier version of things, some version of him you had believed in for reasons that still partially sense. But the settlement, when it was finalized, reflected the full value of what we'd built together. The dissipation of marital assets through Halcyon Property Group was entered into the record. The consulting fee structure was included in the financial disclosures. Patricia was thorough. I had given her everything she needed to be thorough. Marcus's attorney negotiated hard. Marcus negotiated the way he always had, using confidence as a substitute for information, right up until the point where information was all that mattered. The lemon tree is still in the backyard of the house, which I kept. It produces more fruit than I can use. I bring bags of lemons to my mother. I bring them to Aunt Phyllis, who puts them in her tea. I left a bag on Patricia Holt's receptionist's desk with a note that said, "Thank you and nothing else," because some things don't need more words than that. I've been asked since then how I held it together that night at the restaurant, how I sat there through the dinner, through the speech, through taken care of, and didn't say anything until I was ready. I don't think it was strength exactly. Or not only that, I think it was the folder in the trunk of my car, the legal pad on the kitchen table. The 16 years I'd spent learning how to read what the numbers were actually saying. Marcus spent 11 years assuming that because I hadn't said something, I didn't know it. He confused my patience with ignorance. He saw a woman who didn't make a scene and decided she wasn't paying attention. I was always paying attention. I was just waiting until I had everything I needed. And when you're sitting across the table from someone who thought they knew exactly how this story would end, there is something clarifying about that moment. Something that settles into your bones and stays. I didn't need to be loud about it. I had done the work, and the work spoke.